Well, hello everyone. This is Data Driven Formula One with Patrick Henz and Ganna Pogrebna. Hi, Patrick.
Hey Ganna, hello all. Nice to be back in the 80s.
Yes, so and very bizarre season, 1982.
Yep.
Lots of interesting things happened, and probably by looking at the season's grid, you will never guess who won the season if you don't know. Yeah.
Exactly, and we will all discuss it. I mean, as many already know, 82, very interesting, but also very tragic season, unfortunately, again. And so a lot of topics to discuss today.
Yeah, that's right. A lot of tragic accidents. And yeah, just a really bizarre season. So let's get to it. Yay!
Right. Yeah,
So
we see new special effects.
it's not really. Yeah, I just thought it would be funny. It's like
Right.
yeah. So yeah, because of the season itself, and yeah, I think it's probably just by looking at the standings and the wins, you probably cannot tell who won. Because as a spoiler, I can tell you that the winner of this season won only one race, in fact. So
Right.
who was that? So you can.
Now, of course,
There are
you can go
still many possibilities here.
Yeah. And this is not only valid for the driver. I mean, also if you see the constructors, we have victories for Renault, McLaren, Ferrari, Brabham, Renault, Lotus, Williams, and this is also here difficult to see who will be the winner at the end.
Yeah, that's right. So yeah, we will talk about quite a few races, and yeah, so but probably before, yeah, Patrick found a great quote from Nigel Roebuck, who is actually, if you're watching us on YouTube or Spotify, that's him with also a very known another very known figure from Formula One.
And still active figure.
Yes.
Well, depending when you see this video, but if you see it this year, 2022, still active.
Yes, that's right. But you can probably guess who Nigel is in the photo.
Yes.
and maybe you can tell us which one it is. But I mean, joking aside, yeah, this is obviously Fernando Alonso and Nigel Roebuck. And Nigel is very iconic commentator in the UK, and very famous. And Patrick found a quote from him describing the season.
I think it's a very fitting one. And by the way, as you mentioned, the photo is not from 82, but the quote is from 82.
No, yeah, the photo is not from 82, but yeah, I just kind of was trying to find a good photo of Nigel, and I think this one is a good one.
Yeah, that's right. So for the case that you are on just with the audio podcast, so let's read the quote for you. It says, "An ugly year, pock-marked by tragedy, by dissension, by greed, and yet, paradoxically, it produced some of the most memorable racing ever seen."
Yeah, that's right. And we will talk about this memorable racing and very bizarre, absolutely bizarre races that we witnessed that year. Especially my kind of most striking memory from the season is actually Monaco race, but we will talk about it later.
Exactly. And some updates before the season, some change in regulations. the new rules for 82 have been changed. So now we can have up to 34 cars permitted for the weekend, from which only 26 are allowed to start. For this, we implemented the pre-qualifying, which we had, I don't know, until the early 90s. I'm not quite sure. So we had first the pre-qualifying, where three teams in this year had to participate, and the best one had been allowed for the qualification. And inside the qualification, they could see if they could start on Sunday, yes or no.
Yeah, I don't remember actually when that changed, but we can look it up definitely. We probably could.
Yeah.
We probably could do a special on different changes that we introduced at different years. But and Patrick and I have already discussed in a special episode various kind of political issues around Formula One that happened around the beginning of 1980s, and you can certainly check it out in a special episode.
Exactly.
And so not only there was a change in rules, but also there was kind of a lot going on behind the scenes between different groups that were so that we call the FOCA-FISA conflict, we can say that, war, that was happening behind the scenes, and you can check out a separate episode on that.
Exactly. And we have an epic return. Nobody else than
Niki Lauda. I mean, that's really cool of him, and we will talk about several drivers, but Niki Lauda is just absolutely amazing person, and even after he retired, I think he owned an airline, right? An airline that later became that later he sold to Austrian Air, which is amazing. But he returned.
Yes, and it's, I think, one of the less few examples of a successful return of a former champion. As various times drivers tried to return but never could connect to the level where they had been before. But we will see this in the next years also, and Niki Lauda could really continue where he left off.
Yeah, and especially after the accident that he suffered, that's just absolutely amazing. And it's so even more amazing that considering that James Hunt by this time became the commentator, and he commented on 1982 season. So and we will talk about that as well when we discuss, for example, again Monaco race. So there's a very famous basically comment by James Hunt. So so kind of he already took the retirement, and Niki Lauda decided to return, which is awesome.
Yeah, and for example, speaking about James Hunt, it was rumored that he also tried to return to Formula One, but he didn't find an adequate seat for himself, so he stayed commenting the races.
That's correct.
But with this, now we are really continuing with the races. South Africa, as a lot of times we are starting the new season down there. Well, down there, at least for me, who is in the Northern Hemisphere.
And we are straight into controversy, into controversy, because there was a driver strike, right? That we also very famous.
Exactly, and one of the main figures here had been Niki Lauda, because there had been change in regulations before the season, and important, these regulations had not been aligned with the drivers. So Niki Lauda was the person who really I mean, as you mentioned, he was also a very great businessman. He was good with negotiations. So he was really one of the drivers who read the complete regulations, including the parts maybe printed a little bit smaller. And he found a provision saying that drivers are not allowed anymore to change the team inside the season. So they had to finish the season with the team where they started from. And this was something where Niki Lauda was not very happy about. So he spoke with Didier Pironi, who was in that time the leader of the drivers union, and they met and they said, we will not start in South Africa if you will not change the regulations. Which at the end FIA gave in, and so the race started as planned.
Yeah, and subsequently there was a fine, right, for the drivers, and then they went to court, and then the FIA court actually kind of reversed that decision, and sort of they reinstated the kind of the previous conditions and criticized FISA for handling this dispute. And basically, that kind of how it ended.
Yeah, and speaking about the results, Alain Prost, as you see him here on the right, driving for Renault. So the first victory for the this year for the French turbo-engined car. Second position, a very positive result for Carlos Reutemann, who returned in the beginning to 82, because after 81 he was already thinking of retiring, but he started again in the beginning for the Williams team, and a good third position also for René Arnoux.
Yeah, and again, René Arnoux is again Renault, so basically like Carlos Reutemann in Williams, kind of sandwiched between the two Renault drivers there on the podium. Yeah.
Yes, and also a sandwich of the two different concepts. Renault with the turbo engine, Carlos Reutemann with the traditional Ford Cosworth, and René Arnoux again with turbo. And we will see in 82 we have more teams who switched to turbo engines.
That's right. All right. So Brazil, US, and San Marino.
Right. Brazil as traditionally the second race in the season. And then again, another victory for Alain Prost. Then we have John Watson and another famous name, Nigel Mansell.
And Carlos Reutemann retired. Yeah, right at that point.
Exactly. We will also have a special episode about Carlos Reutemann. So, I mean, he already there had been some problems inside the team already. 81, he wasn't very happy. Besides this, we had political problems. Well, a little bit more than just problems between the UK, where Williams is, and Argentina, where Carlos Reutemann was from, as we had the conflict / war about the Falkland Islands, or Malvinas, as you call them in Spain and Spanish. So there are various factors why Carlos Reutemann was thinking about retirement. He already said he wanted to retire after 81, came back, but then after the second race in Rio thought, yes, I want to retire, and so he did.
And so we also have in the US the first pole position for Andrea De Cesaris again. Also, when we will discuss Monaco Grand Prix, there will also be pretty cool incident with him. And San Marino, also very interesting race, again overshadowed by all this political rivalry between FISA FOCA, and was boycotted by many teams. I think only 7 teams started in that race. So just absolutely crazy sort of political and personal circumstances there. And it kind of also shows you that really Formula One stopped being this sport where everyone could enter, and it was not only already matured not only from the professional teams but also to some institutions that these professional teams produced. And these institutions started fights. Yeah.
And San Marino, we had another important incident regarding the Ferrari team. We had Gilles Villeneuve leading long time, and then receiving signs from both drivers received signs from the Ferrari pit. I think it was saying stay, and both drivers somehow interpreted differently as or not stay as slow, meaning Gilles Villeneuve saw it and thought with this also, as he knew it from the years before, this meant that both drivers should drive a little bit slower and keep position. And Didi Pironi understood or wanted to understand it differently, meaning that Villeneuve was slowed and that he can overtake him. And so in the last moment, Didier Pironi overtook Gilles Villeneuve and took victory. And this led to a very toxic atmosphere inside the Ferrari team, inside these two drivers, which may or may not have been a factor of the fatal accident from Villeneuve a little bit later.
Yeah, not much later, we have to say.
Not much later, unfortunately, yeah. By the way, if you are here on YouTube, we have found a very nice photo here from the Alpha team. On the left, they mentioned Andrea de Cesaris. I think one of the drivers which stayed the longest time active in Formula One. I still remember him at the end of the 90s practically.
That's right.
And now we are coming to Zolder, and as you already mentioned, here we had in the qualifying session the fatal accident of Gilles Villeneuve, where he was on a very fast lap, but tried to overtake the slower arrows from Jochen Maas. Maas wanted to go, I think, to the right to let him by, but Villeneuve already was too fast and wanted to overtake him on the right, so he touched the arrows and flew off and had the fatal accident.
That's absolutely right, and that again significantly affected Ferrari, who it just had a very, very strong effect, and even in subsequent races we will see it. But in terms of the victory in the race itself, it was John Watson again, and we had Keke Rosberg and Eddie Shiver in second and third respectively. But
just to add,
but definitely very significant event in this Zolder qualifying, not practice, qualifying, because obviously Gilles Villeneuve was extremely talented driver and really one of the kind of I think big hopes of Ferrari, and this had a very, very serious effect on Ferrari as a team.
That's right. And later we will also have, of course, a special episode about Gilles Villeneuve. You mentioned that this had a very strong impact on Ferrari. This not only because he was a talented driver, but also he had a very close relation to Enzo Ferrari, who practically saw him like a son, especially as his own son died early on. So there had been a very close relation between the two, even if Enzo Ferrari tried to avoid this with drivers in the earlier years. So also it was a strong personal impact on Enzo Ferrari and the whole team. There had been a long discussion if this somehow was impacted by the rivalry between Didier Pironi and him, especially as Pironi potentially disobeyed with team order. And we will discuss it, I think, more in detail in this episode about Gilles Villeneuve. I mean, there are some factors which would support this. On the other hand, Gilles Villeneuve always drove at the limit, even over the limit, and had in the past some very big accidents, but always could climb out the car practically without any injury.
Yeah, that's right.
So
very lucky. Yeah, he had some very lucky
exactly.
escapes.
So if you see his behavior in the last years, I mean, this would speak a little bit against the theory that it was caused, this accident, only by this toxic atmosphere. It was the way he was driving all over the years, and it's practically had to end with him, as he always was at the limit and over the limit.
All right. So yeah, but also they couldn't immediately replace Gilles Villeneuve if we talk about Ferrari as a team, and so we had one driver driving for Ferrari for quite a while, and I know that sort of Patrick wants to jump straight into the Canadian race, which was also quite dramatic, but I want to stop at the Monaco race because this is the race that I remember very vividly. And if you haven't seen the race, I really encourage you to watch it because I bet that if you are a recent Formula One fan, you have never seen anything like it. It's just absolutely unprecedented race. So why is that? Okay, so as you can see, the standing on your screen, if you're watching us on YouTube or Spotify, it's Riccardo Patrese in the first place, Didier Pironi in the second place, and Andrea de Cesaris in the third place. But now I will tell you how they got there, and you will understand what I mean by like really bizarre race. So Patrick already mentioned that we had two very strong Renault cars in this whole season, and in fact, the Renault cars, they dominated the entire race. And we had, from Ferrari, we only had Didier Pironi because it was very, very close to the death of Gilles Villeneuve. This race happened only 2 weeks later, in fact, after Belgium. And so René Arnoux, who was one of the Renault drivers, he was leading for 14 first race and first laps of the race, and then on lap 15 he spun off basically at the swimming pool there. And essentially what happened was Alain Prost was leading almost the entire race and he led this race until lap 74, so like very, very close to the end. And then he crashed. So he crashed into the barriers. He basically was very quick and didn't sort of react properly to the sort of the kind of this the challenging turn, and essentially he crashed. And then we had Riccardo Patrese, who you see on your screen, and he was leading during the lap 75, I believe. And then there was basically what happened. He kind of spun off on the oil and stalled. And this is when I remember, like, very vividly the commentary by James Hunt, because James Hunt was like, we're sitting here at the finishing line and we're still trying to find some winner to emerge from this race, because practically everybody has stopped by that time. So then we had Pironi, right? And the problem with Pironi was that his battery was not properly charged, and his engine started to basically, started to misfire, and he couldn't continue. And Andrea De Cesaris, he ran out of fuel. So like it's like a whole disaster that is happening. And we have to give it up to Riccardo Patrese, who kind of ended this whole dilemma of who is going to win, because he bump started the car. And I think it's probably like one of the very rare occasions in Formula One when that happened. But he managed to bump start the car and actually finish the race first. But it's probably the most bizarre race that you can ever see in your whole life, because everything that could go wrong with all the leading cars went wrong with all the leading cars. And the winner, like I said, he just got there by bump starting the car, which is also absolutely unprecedented. So if you haven't watched this race, please do. And I just want to again remind you that we only share what we can legally on this on our channel, and this is meant to be a podcast, so you only see sort of some supporting pictures that we can share either on CC BY license, which is a fair use license, or we have actually bought rights to demonstrate. So essentially, we really encourage you to go to the FIA channel or to other formal channel of maybe some magazines like Formula One magazine, for example, and watch this race. It's really, you haven't seen anything like it. I guarantee. Yeah.
That's right. I mean, it was a completely other time. You couldn't imagine something similar today.
Yeah, exactly. And
also, I mean, sorry. I mean, also the fascinating point from the early 80s is that we have really different concepts competing against each other. If you look 2022, more or less the cars look all the same concepts of engine, but here we had really complete different concepts competing against each other.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. I also wanted to point out that we had 3 races in the US, right? So right. We again here we have Detroit, and we also had a race in Los Angeles, I believe, if I'm not mistaken, that year. So so we've already shown you
one which we will have also, I think, next year, 2023, with Miami. Auburn, Austin, sorry, and Las Vegas.
Las Vegas, yeah.
Anyway,
off to US, and again we have John Watson there at the top, which is quite kind of expected, I guess. And then Canada. Yeah, Canada was also a very exciting race.
Yeah. But also a very tragic, as we have here, the second fatal accident by the young Italian driver Riccardo Paletti, who started for the Osella team. So somebody who practically just stepped in Formula One and never had the opportunity to shine because Osella was really A team which you could qualify for the race, but then you had been quite at the end of the race, and maybe this was also what triggered the fatal outcome for him. Because of the different constructions of engine, what we saw quite often in the 1980s was that drivers signaled with their hands that they couldn't start their engine. If it was detected on time, then the start was stopped. And in this case, it was not possible. So right at the start, Pironi,
Yeah,
who
again,
had
we
the
have
pole
Didier
position,
Peroni involved in this whole mess.
yes,
Because, yeah, he tried to signal, right, that there was a problem, but it was too late because the race already started, and kind of that caused all this mess at the start.
exactly. So he lifted his hand because he stalled his engine, but was too late. Luckily, most of the other cars could avoid hitting him, going left, going right. We had a spin of the marches with Eliseo Salazar, again Jochen Maas, Jean Bossel, and but at the end, it seems that everybody could have passed him. Then came unfortunately Paletti, and maybe starting like from the last position. And you mentioned with all. I mean, if you see the starts in Formula One from the different camera perspective, you see that you're just starting accelerating and hope that nothing happens, because you can't really see if somebody would stand there. And this happened. He couldn't see the standing Pioni and drove inside him. And this unfortunately caused the fatal accident.
Yeah, so on the Osala, if you remember Osala cars that we looked at them in quite a while, they're really not as heavy duty as other cars. Are quite like more like karting cars, are quite light.
Yes.
They tend to be, and that also had a very bad impact. But yeah, also like I just this kind of this fatal accident happened at the beginning of the race, and again, if you haven't seen many 1980s races, this is a good race to watch, despite the tragedy, because also you can see some absolutely amazing driving from Nelson Piquet, who won this race. And I again would like to encourage you to watch the original footage, because it's probably nothing like you've seen, not driving from Formula One driving, not like you've seen in recent years. Yeah.
Agreed. Then coming back to the old continent, we are in Netherlands, Zandvoort. The last victory for Didi Pironi, and here Patrick Tambay started for the Ferrari team. So these are the important key takeaways. Besides this, of course, the victory for Pironi. Then again, Nelson Piquet with a very good result. And then on the third position, Keke Rosberg for Williams.
Yeah, that's right. And in UK, again, not very surprising. Niki Lauda was very dominant there, and Didier Pironi in the second place. And we have this the new driver for Ferrari, Patrick Tambay, in the third place. So he already started to be quite producing quite good results for Ferrari team, which actually made a lot of difference for them as a team in that season. Yeah.
France, Paul Ricard. And another big accident with Jochen Maas again, and Mauro Baldi. Maas with March and Baldi with Eros. Maas car here went through the catch fencing into the tire walls, when then capitulated into a spectator, everyone caught fire. Mars could escape with burns on his hands while several spectators were injured. Luckily, nothing more serious happened. But let's say this was practically for Jochen Maas the last wake-up call. I mean, he was anyway in retirement age. He with March also not in a team which was very competitive, and he really understood it would be a good moment to finally leave, because he was involved in 2 accidents, including the one with Gilles Villeneuve. So he really thought that's enough for me. He not quit racing. He went on to sports car racing, drove, for example, together with Michael Schumacher. But for Formula One, this was it for Jochen Maas.
Yeah.
What's this?
And the picture, if you watch us on YouTube or Spotify, the picture that you see is actually from Hockenheim in Germany.
Yeah.
And this is the infamous accident of Didier Pironi that basically took him kind of over the edge, in the sense that he never raced again after this. And he walked, like Patrick said, miraculously, considering that's what it was left of the car. If you can see.
Yeah.
If you can see the picture, if you're watching us on video, in video format, and it's amazing that he it was not a fatal accident. He seriously hurt his leg, but ultimately, he never raced again after this. And he hit Alan Prost, right? If I'm not mistaken.
That's correct. He hit Alan Prost. He was going slow. This accident happened not in the race, but in practice.
Qualifying, practice. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And by the way, it's not completely correct that he never raced again regarding automotive. In Formula One, in automotive in general, not, because he started with racing speedboats, which unfortunately led to the fatal accident he would suffer some years later, which was in speedboat racing.
Yeah, but it's correct that he never returned to Formula One after that.
That's correct. He never raced, I think, in general automotive, but for whatever reason he went to speedboat racing.
Mm-hmm.
Where he had his fatal accident.
Mm-hmm. And but we have to say that Ferrari actually has done quite well in Germany, because again Patrick Tambay was first in that race, followed by René Arnaud for Renault and Keke Rosberg.
Exactly. It was, as mentioned, the last race for Didi Pironi. For this reason, we put here the standings after the Hockenheim race. So Didi Pironi, even if he not started in Hockenheim, he was leading with 39 points. Then we have John Watson with McLaren, 30 points, and Keke Rosberg with 27 points for the Williams teams. And this just as an idea how, I mean, it's always just theoretically speaking, what would have happened if this or that driver wouldn't have had the accident. But let's say if Didi Pironi wouldn't have had this accident, most likely he would have been the champion, because he was very successful as a driver, and also the Ferrari maybe had been the best car that year.
Yeah. All right, Austria. Yeah, again, very. So Austria is always an interesting race, kind of like Belgium, because it rains quite often during the race. And here, we have Elio De Angelis in the first place, which was a surprise, followed by Keke Rosberg and Jacques Lafitte. And yeah. Um, yeah, I guess the interesting part is the Lotus, like last victory for Lotus.
Yeah, practically the car wasn't competitive that year, but somehow Elio managed it to win this race,
Yeah,
which was
yeah, I just want to say, but considering the concept of Lotus cars, which are always kind of light cars, Austrian track is actually very good for that. Like, you know, if you are
right.
in a light car and if you can hold it together, you probably will be a lot better off than others. And this, I think, they just use that competitive advantage. Well, obviously, Elio De Angelis, who you know, with his driving talent, kind of used it to his advantage, and scored that victory for Lotus.
Exactly, and some date for celebration. This was the 150th victory for the Cosworth Ford engine. The second point, of course, was not celebrated. This was the last victory of a Lotus car in the lifetime of its founder, Colin Chapman.
Yeah. Okay. Very significant race. If you look at the standings, we will understand why. Keke Rosberg in the first place, and Alan Prost in the second, and Niki Lauda in the third. And just kind of the podium was pretty cool to see. And unfortunately, yeah, we had again the setback on Ferrari's side when Patrick Tambay could not start the race.
Exactly, he had some health issues. Ferrari had nominated a driver with the Brazilian Chico Serra, but unfortunately nominated him too late, so he wasn't able to drive.
Start.
So yeah, I think he drove. He had been in Formula One before, maybe in the Fittipaldi team, if I'm correct. Maybe it was a different one.
I don't remember. Yeah,
Me
off the top
neither.
of my head.
Yeah, me neither. I mean, so he lost his chance to drive for Ferrari in Formula One. Nevertheless, later he drove for Ferrari, for example, in the Le Mans series, where we also took the photo from. If you are a little bit fit in geography, you may saw it. We have the Swiss Grand Prix, but in Dijon, which is France. This due to a law in Switzerland, which was implemented after the big accident in Le Mans in the 1950s with the Mercedes Silver Arrows, the Silberpfeile, that it was not allowed to have highest level motorsport events inside Switzerland. And that's why the Swiss Grand Prix was organized inside France.
Well, Monza.
Monza.
Again, a very, very successful race for Renault. With René Arnoux in the first place, but as you can see, the Ferrari is back in the competition in the sense that Patrick Tambay was back by then and in the second place there quite comfortably.
Yes, and maybe even more important for the Tifosi, the man who had been on the third position, Mario Andretti, in the age of 42. He received a call from the Ferrari team that they needed his help. And as he said, when Enzo is calling, of course, I'm packing my suitcase and I'm coming. So practically without experience in actual Formula One cars, he had been out of Formula One various years and was not planning to come back, so he could not prepare like, for example, Niki Lauda did. But nevertheless, he reached the third position, even if the Ferrari maybe was the best car all over the season. I mean, it's a fantastic result.
And then we're back to the US again. To Las Vegas. And
Las Vegas.
yeah, again, John Watson doing quite well there in the second place, but it was the first victory for Michele Boretta.
Yes, in the Tyrrell.
Yeah, that's right. And so also quite an interesting race if you get a chance to watch it.
That's correct. So we had a lot of interesting races. Before we come to the conclusion, who had been the champion driver, we see the manufacturers. And I already mentioned it. I think the Ferrari really was the best car all over the season. And with this, we have the first Constructors Championship for turbo-powered car. So this title not went to Renault, who pioneered this technology, but let's say the fast second mover, which was Ferrari, who interestingly switched the concept. Interesting because it was known that Enzo Ferrari is a quite stubborn person, but his engineer convinced him that the future is the turbo. So that's what Ferrari did. And due to this, Ferrari became surprisingly the first champion of the turbo-powered car.
Yeah, and I think it's also important to say that really Ferrari was, I guess, the team of the year in the sense that considering how many setbacks they suffered, they couldn't start and they lost two drivers in the process. It's just an absolutely crazy season for Ferrari, and still they managed to be in the first place at the end. So that's I think, yeah, again, considering, everything that's happened, that's kind of double. We should give them the double credit because it's most teams, they need several years to bounce back. And Ferrari managed to consistently score in the championship. Even with one car, they did pretty well.
Exactly. And number two, McLaren, Ford. So here we have the traditional Cosworth. Then again, Renault with the turbo. Then the various Ford customer teams, Williams, Lotus, Tyrrell, Brabham, also with the new turbo engine by BMW or BMW. Then we have Talbot Ligier with the Matra engine, Brabham Ford, Alfa Romeo, Aeros Ford, ATS Ford, Osella Ford, and still Fittipaldi Ford. Mm-hmm. And I'm just, we not have the Tolman Hart. No, we not have. They're coming next year then as the third turbo team. Yeah. So that's the Constructors Championship. Have a look on the cars. The Ferrari 126 C2. Very fast, I think very aerodynamic design. So I think a very holistic and attractive package.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. Yeah. Really beautiful design, this one.
Yep. Brabham P50.
Yeah, that's a notorious car that we actually saw jump started and winning races. Sorry, not jump started, bump started, which is even more remarkable. Yeah.
Yeah, and also again the iconic livery, white, blue.
Parmalat,
yeah. Parmalat blue. I mean, fitting. I mean, BMW also white and blue, so quite fitting package. Also from the colors.
Yep. Yeah, very bright colors that season. Yeah, with Tyrrell being blue.
Yeah. So it's this very conservative approach by Tyrrell. Not bad for a team with limited budget. to stay a little bit more conservative and maybe collect points where the others, for whatever reasons, had to stop before seeing the checkered flag.
That's right. Yeah, Williams.
FW08.
Yeah, very nice car. Not very reliable, not as reliable, let's just say, as Renault and Ferrari that season, but definitely, definitely the competitor. I think it really suffered from reliability issues in that particular season.
Yes. And I would assume also with top speed in comparison to the Renault or Ferrari.
Yeah. Well, McLaren, as many people remember it, this kind of orange, orange-red, let's just say, Marlboro livery.
Also relative conservative design, conservative Cosworth engine, but quite successful.
Yeah, very successful.
Yeah, very successful. I mean,
second
position.
Second. Mm-hmm.
Best of the Cosworth team. So really successful. Also, of course, thanks to their drivers, John Watson and Niki Lauda.
Yeah, I think in the States they've done really well on the straight, which is quite a remarkable thing considering that the car is not really like this wouldn't strike you as a car for straight for straight circuits, but I mean it was very, very good.
Yeah, which not really applies for the next one, the RTS D5.
Yeah, but I kind of like the yellow.
Me too.
and I like the variety of colors because like now you watch and everything is pretty much silverish, and not the cars are not very different from each other like when you watch the race, but
I mean not only the race, the same applies if you just stepping out your apartment, your house. Most colors are the same, silver, white. We don't have so many cars like in the 80s, which are yellow, green, or red anymore.
Yeah. Black is a popular color.
Yes.
True. Yeah, that's
and black.
Here's a black. here's a iconic Lotus, which scored the victory as we told you in Austria that year. Very again. So I really miss Lotus because Lotus, yes, like I said before, many times one of my favorite teams of all time, and very innovative, really cool ideas. Unfortunately, as Patrick and I discussed before in our special about Chapman, you can basically watch it again. There were a lot of financial problems and fraud and all sorts of accusations with Colin Chapman, and that kind of brought the whole competitive run of Lotus to close eventually, but very successful team, very cool outlook with this black black colors, black and gold.
That's right. And since we are turning a little bit to yellow again, Renault with the RE30B, successful, but not successful enough to become the first turbo-engined constructor, but maybe the next time.
Yeah, but I think it also had to do with the there are several things here, right? So it kind of like first thing is obviously the budgets, but the second thing, I think it's also not so much the budgets, but we have to understand that Renault is a public company, or at least partially public. Whereas Ferrari is a private company, and it kind of tells you that if you have two concepts, a private company is more efficient because you make faster decisions.
Yeah.
At least, I mean, that's sort of my
Mostly,
speculative view. But private property actually helps when you care as an entrepreneur about your performance, and you just are able to make decisions a lot faster, and that
exactly.
matters.
But nevertheless, they have been third in the Constructors Championship. So let's say for a governmental-owned company, they did quite well.
Yeah, that's right.
And this is not a Williams, even if it's sponsored by Rosemans and also IC, which we saw later with Williams, but this is the March 821.
Yeah, I have to say that I'm not don't remember this car very well, but looks interesting. Looks
Yeah, me
interesting.
neither. I mean,
It's kind of very low, right? Like very, very low standing. Yeah, I don't know. Yeah, orange and blue. Alfa Romeo. Yeah.
Yeah, the 182 also not that successful. I mean, interesting from a marketing point is that Marlboro really had been main sponsor on two completely different teams that year. But besides this, unfortunately, not that competitive this year.
Yeah, that's right. Ligier.
Yeah, Ligier, Matra.
Yeah, very cute, blue and white and red design. And,
very French.
Yeah.
And from this,
I kind of like the Gitano livery, but this one is cute. Yeah, it's kind of has all the colors.
I completely agree. Of course, this is a little bit a pity that we lost the Big Tobacco based on these classic libraries, which of course I can understand why we not want to have too much marketing for Big Tobacco.
Yes, and I want to reiterate that Patrick and we do not smoke, and we do not recommend anybody to do that. It's a bad idea.
Exactly.
But we discussed, we have 2-part special on the impact of Big Tobacco sponsorship and Formula One, so please check it out.
Exactly.
There you will see a lot of cigarette advertisement, unfortunately, but at the same time, we tell you why it was important to have it.
Exactly. I mean, also what we discussed in these 2 episodes is that it was really a complete different time where it was still accepted, for example, that parents smoke when their children are in the same room, for example. So something which you couldn't imagine to have today.
Yeah, but I mean, I kind of see that the trend returning now with a lot of, previously, I think in all American movies, if someone smoked, it was some sort of villain or European.
Yes.
Two options.
Combined.
But really now it's kind of coming back. Like there are a lot of films, especially set in 1960s, 1950s, 1970s, even 1980s, when people smoke on screen. And I think that has an effect on generally sort of popularity of smoking. And so we need to be careful with this.
Yeah, I mean, you're the data scientist. I don't have seen any statistics which would say that smoking is returning. I mean, I don't see it when I'm leaving the house that people smoke more. But also I see that
I'm just saying that in movies,
yes.
right? In movies.
Right. Well, the question would be if this would trigger that now more people feel motivated to smoke themselves, which I'm not.
It's a testable hypothesis. I don't know the answer.
Yeah, that's why I'm just raising the question. As I said, I don't saw any data this related.
Yep.
And at least here in the US, if you see these movies or series on Netflix, Amazon, Disney, you always get a warning sign that this series movie is including smoking. But with this, we're coming now to the orange arrows.
Arrows, yeah. Again, yeah, that wasn't very successful, but at the same time, it's always nice to have teams like Arrows in
Right, a little
competition.
bit in the nowhere land of Formula One, meaning very far away from the points, but on the other hand, without problems to qualify for the race, in opposite to other teams. Tollman TG 183, very nice livery, looks very.
I really like the Segafredo livery, cute.
Yeah.
And different kind of red, like more of a Maserati type of red, like really dark burgundy red, really cute.
Yeah, I mean, you unfortunately you cannot see it that good in this photo, but it has somehow a double rear wing, a big.
Yeah, like
first one and then a smaller
1970s
one.
almost.
Yes.
Like yeah.
Yeah, unfortunately, in this photo where we have the rides, we couldn't see it, but quite interesting concept. Okay, this is the last car for today, and finally, we will tell you who won this year.
Yeah, surprise, surprise! It
Surprise, surprise! It is Keke Rosberg.
Keke Rosberg, who only won the Dijon. So actually, this is the most bizarre season because the winner only won one race, and not only that, on average, he scored 2.75 points in the rest of the races. But I mean, it's he just got very lucky that obviously Didier Pironi suffered a setback with the German Grand Prix accident, and
Also,
obviously
of course,
Jean Villeneuve
yes.
died in Zavos earlier in Belgium. So really, I mean, this was, I mean, we're not trying to degrade. So if you're obviously a Keke Rosberg team, a Williams fan, when we're not trying to say that Keke Rosberg was not worthy of championship. Let's face it, like all the drivers that are competing in Formula One are very good drivers.
Yeah.
That's why they're competing there. So we completely appreciate the talent, but really this was absolutely bizarre. Like we saw before some surprising wins, even like 1 point wins, but this was I think nothing like you've seen before. Definitely.
Yeah. And I mean, this is maybe less a critic to Keke Rosberg, but we have to face that he was not sitting in the fastest cars. So normally either Gilles Villeneuve or Didi Pironi, but also if we see, for example, the results from Patrick Tambay, they had been constantly faster, but as then none of them participated the whole season, that was the opportunity. And we discussed it very times before. You're not always in the best car, but you have to collect the points, and always coming something unexpected, not predictable, and you have to be there for such situations. And Keke Rosberg was there.
Yeah, but it also tells you that this whole idea of giving the podium positions and the winner more points probably is a good idea, because you create a little bit of difference between people who are scoring below the third place. That's probably is a good way of doing it, because like if if we consider the wins that were scored by Ferrari, and if they had more points for the first and second place, right, then the result would have been different in the season.
Yeah. And maybe we like to consider here also that Carlos Reutemann left Williams in the second race. So you may, of course, speculate where Reutemann would have ended up if he would have finished the season with Williams.
Yeah, that's right. That is correct. But considering like individual competition, again, would have changed the team competition probably, but not sure how it would have played out.
Exactly. It's pure speculation. So we have Keke Rosberg, Didi Pironi, even if he had less races, still came on the second position, and number 3, John Watson for the McLaren team, who interestingly bet Niki Lauda. Which is interesting because even if John Watson was a very good driver, I think he was clearly the number 2 in the McLaren team, especially when we consider the salaries.
Yes.
Number 4, Alain Prost.
René Arnoux in the same sort of batch here, and Niki Lauda kind of in the middle.
Right.
Yeah. And
Renault. By the way, there's a very good documentary on Rai. In the case you're in Italy, you can see it on the app where also René Arnoux is speaking a lot about Gilles Villeneuve, as they have been really very good friends, so spend a lot of time together in the weekends, including something what you cannot imagine today. That, for example, Gilles Villeneuve was eating together with Arnoux in the Renault van, and later Arnoux was at the Ferrari team having pasta together. So something which I think we could not imagine today in Formula One.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. Yeah, Patrick Tambay, who had a very successful sort of start in Formula One, very good. Yeah, Michel Alboreto for Tyrrell, and Elio De Angelis, who scored actually a victory for Lotus that season.
Exactly, in a Lotus which was not very competitive.
That's right.
Okay, that's the driver's standing, and with this we coming to behavior.
Yeah, I mean, in terms of characters, I don't know. That's a good. Probably we have to go with Enzo Ferrari, and because it's been really a lot that the team was through and pull it all together and win the constructor championship and come close to winning the driver championship that year. That was really cool.
And maybe also because the 80s still have been different from today, as luckily it wasn't normal that drivers have fatal accident, but it was still something which you have to include into your calculations. So maybe in opposite today, this is something which you include into your strategy, and you maybe act what you would consider today a bit heartless, but it was still the beginning of the 80s where we had
I don't
numbers
know.
of
I mean,
accidents.
I think I want to disagree there with you, Patrick, about that. And I think, like you said before, I mean, and you are the expert on Enzo Ferrari, know a lot more. And we've talked about Enzo Ferrari before. We have a special about him. And I think he was affected personally every time he lost a driver. So probably, I don't think he factored in that someone would die, but I think it was just a very, I mean, this whole attitude that you should not give up even at the face of tragic events like that. I think that is probably more of a just personal charisma thing rather than a strategy, but I might be wrong.
Yeah.
I think that considering that, he had very, very personal attitude to this, I don't think he was planning for like these types of eventualities.
No, not yeah. That's not saying planning it, and of course he was heavily affected. But let's say it's something that you have to consider if you want to have a sustainable approach inside motorsports. And unfortunately, Enzo Ferrari experienced fatal accidents of his drivers more than he wanted to, especially in the 1960s and of 50s. So this is something which I think each team manager accepted is something which what can happen. I mean, we also discussed it many times, for example, at Lotus. But I think each of the team managers had been aware that this is a possibility, even if they're not directly planned for such occasions.
So notable win again, I'm biased, but for me, definitely Riccardo Patrese in Monaco, for the reasons that I already told you about. And I just think that was just absolutely remarkable race and bizarre, really bizarre. And bump starting the car to win. So for me, it's just the win of the season.
Yeah.
But there were a lot of many kind of notable mentions like Lotus in Austria, and we had various sort of Ferrari wins that were really, really cool. And
and even if not directly a victory, the third position of Mario Andretti at Monza was also a very notable result.
Yeah, in terms of accidents, I don't want to say just Gilles Villeneuve's accident, but probably all, just all fatal accidents that we had, and definitely the Didier Pironi accident in Germany. So there were quite a few unfortunate and tragic events that season. So I think everyone should really be getting a notable mention there.
That's right.
Strategically, very good question. I don't know. Well, apart from Ferrari, obviously, that pulled together through strategy or through, like I said, through charisma of Enzo Ferrari. Probably McLaren, considering the final standings of the team, and Renault as well. So maybe these three teams would be on my pick list.
Yeah, I agree. And McLaren, of course, with the strategic decision to hire Niki Lauda, going a risk, getting him out of retirement, but also maybe not only considering him as a driver, but also his abilities to test and improve cars. I think this was a very good decision. Especially, I mean, it's easy for us to say today as we saw how Niki Lauda developed the McLaren and delivered positive results.
Yep, that's right.
Okay, then speaking about the legacy, and from my side, I mean, we already had this quote right from the beginning of this episode, speaking about tragedies, speaking about fantastic races. And I think this, from my side, would be a great resume of the 1982 season.
Yeah, I think it was just a very bizarre year. I mean, we had political controversy, we had fatal accidents, we had really absolutely unexpected result of the season in terms of driver championship. And yeah, it's just a very bizarre season, like nothing you would have ever seen before. Definitely.
Agreed with you. Yeah. Okay.
All right. With that, we came to the end of this episode. As always, we just wanted to remind you that we are on YouTube and Spotify in the video format. We are in audio or podcast format on many other platforms that Patrick manages, and I have to say that I already lost track of where we are there, but
Practically everywhere.
Practically everywhere. There we go. And yeah, please, yeah, like we always say that, you know, we are not saying that we know everything. If you want to, if you think we missed something, or you want us to pay particular attention to a particular thing in that season, let us know. And as always, we, like I said before, we really encourage you to watch the original footage and really see for yourself some of the races of 1982. That'd be really interesting.
Yep.
All right. And with that, we'll see you next time.
See you next time. Bye-bye.
Bye.